Hey all, and welcome back to a new video of a game that I played recently in my tournament. This is round 5. Of course, we're going out of order here. I have 3 rounds of the tournament on this channel already. I'm not sure if I'm going to do round 3 just yet, but either way, this round is about this round is kind of why you really shouldn't be going for draws, why you really shouldn't be playing for a draw. And that was my mindset for this game. I realized before the game, of course, my opponent was higher rated than me. The ratings that you see on the board are our USCF ratings, so they're a good bit higher than normal chess.com ratings. And basically, I just played for one. I just played for a draw. And let's get into it. So, my opponent starts off the game with the move e4. Very reasonable move, most common move at the beginning, and I go c6, which I was playing throughout the tournament, which is the Caro-Kann defense with c6 d5. Of course, I'm going to try and play more Sicilians in the future. As you can see on the channel, I've been playing some of the Dragon, but that opening is not ready for tournament use yet, so we have not been playing that. Either way, c6, my opponent goes knight f3, I go d5. My opponent goes knight c3, and I decide to go for this line. Takes, knight f6. Of course, I believe that the main move here is either to play knight here or queen e2. It might be queen e2. I think this move is also a move, but I'm not sure. Either way, my opponent decides to capture my knight, and we get into a very, very common position, which is transposed after the move d4 from this line here after this, and this. This is a very common line. This is the Tartakower variation, and that is the line that we are in the game. As you can see, after d4, same opening. My opponent, I decide to go bishop d6, which is one of the main moves in this opening. My opponent goes bishop d3, castles, rook e8, all standard stuff, just developing pieces. Not really a thought has crossed my mind. And after the move bishop e3, I play the main move of the position, which is to go with this very simple move, bishop to g4. If black doesn't play the move bishop g4, which black doesn't have to, but my point is that black mainly tries to play this move because it gives black a lot of play. If black doesn't play this move, they will kind of rarely be able to get their pieces out properly, and the light-scored bishop is kind of stuck out of the game, especially with this light-scored bishop pounding down here. I'm not able to get to this f5 square, which I want to be. Of course, there are some lines where the light-scored bishop come out this way, but either way, bishop g4 is where the game started, and my opponent decides to play the move h3. Reasonable move. Bishop h5 is practically forced. After g4 here, this position with this little pawn cube is normally considered to be pretty good for black, since white has these pawns pushed in front of their king, so I'm not really too scared of that. And my opponent goes with this move, bishop e2. And of course, reasonable breaking the pin. I go knight d7, following my knight. I thought here for a little bit, but not very much because it's a pretty standard position still. And my opponent decides to go with this move, knight h4. And here, at this point, I am thinking pretty much on my own. I don't really have, I've kind of exhausted all the plans of the position that I know, and I'm trying to just play chess, right? So, what happens now is my mindset kind of goes awry. Here, I'm trying to play for a draw, and in retrospect, this is probably why I lost the game. When you're playing for a draw, what you do, you try to go for piece trades, try to get to an endgame, an equal endgame, where at the end of the day, it's pretty simple, pretty standard, and it's not even really a game anymore. So that's what I try to do. I trade the bishops, queen e2, and I trade the other bishops, bishop f4. Not much I can do. And not much he can do. Of course, if he takes my bishop, he would lose his queen, with my rook going down at his queen. And in all honesty here, I was just ready to... Actually, at this point, I was ready to offer a draw and end the game. But my opponent clearly doesn't do that and decides to go with the move queen g4. Okay, reasonable idea. Knight here. Try and checkmate me. Cool. Bishop e3. F e3. And I thought that if I took the pawn, of course, he would completely win the game with the move knight f5, hitting my rook and hitting checkmate with the queen coming down. So that's not a move that I'm going to be playing, and instead of losing the game on the spot, I decide to play a little more defensively. I know the computer says it's minus 0.2, but from a human standpoint, is it really minus 0.2? It looks like white is kind of getting all the pieces in. White's got the queen, the rook, and the knight attacking the king, and black doesn't really have too many defenders, so I'm always a little bit scared of some like sacrifice. Like there might be some like a rook f6 if my knight and queen stop defending the pawn. Like even if this pawn wasn't pinned, like rook f6 to open up the king could be a possibility in the future, and it's getting quite scary. So I come back and I try to like save the position. I go knight f8. All right, reasonable move. Knight f8. Coming back, defending. I'm trying to meet this with a couple of interesting ideas, and my opponent goes knight f5. And now here is my decision. My goal this game is a draw, right? So what I want to do, I have a couple choices. I can either meet it with a g6, knight g6, or knight e6. Those are my three choices to defend this pawn. I thought for a while, that, okay, if I play knight g6, I might be getting into a little bit of trouble. I obviously don't want to get into some trouble. I thought this pawn coming forward could really be a problem. Like, I can't really play this. Obviously, it just loses a pawn. So I thought that could be an issue, and I'm right. That's the worst move in the position. Mine +1. Well, actually, the worst move is g5, but obviously we're not going to play g5. That doesn't blender mate in 1. Knight g6 is the worst move in the position. The second move that I was considering was this move knight e6. Which of course defends the pawn, but what I didn't like about this move is that I'm not really targeting the knight, I'm letting it stay there, I'm keeping it around, and in all honesty, I'm blocking my rook. It just seems like kind of a bad move. Also, there's, that's not a check, stupid. But knight e6, I could have played, it's kind of a reasonable idea, but I decided not to play, and I decided to go for this move g6, which is the top engine move. And I'm kind of proud about that, and I decided, okay, my opponent, you know what he can do? He can play a draw. He can play a draw here. I'd be happy with a draw. That's my main goal. Knight h6, king g7, knight f5. I could probably do either one, king h8 or king g8. Both are pretty reasonable moves. After king g8, my opponent would just come back with the move knight h6. And after king h8, the way to make a draw here with white, the only move is knight h6. And really, my only real move, my only real defense is to go back to g7. And I was very much prepared to just make a draw in 15 moves and be done with it. But, of course, my opponent had other plans. After the move g6, my opponent decided to go queen g3. Another fair move. To Android eye, of course, it looks like the knight is hanging. It's not. Pawn is being pinned. Remember to watch out for board vision. Very important thing for all you players who are under 800, under 1,000. Always important to watch out for board vision. But instead, the idea of this move, and my opponent obviously had an idea, he's better than me at the game. His idea was to go with this move, knight to e3, e6, d6, sorry, I do not know my notation, knight to d6, which I thought was a bit of an issue because he's targeting this pawn, he's targeting this pawn. If I defend the pawn, and he's also targeting my rook. If I defend the pawn with rook e7, I thought there were some interesting problems. Simply, rook takes f6 is a problem, since my queen no longer defends the pawn, and he has kind of monster pressure against my king, so I thought the only reasonable move, really, is to play rook e6. It's the best move. It's equal to the best move. It says excellent here because this engine is stupid, but it is the best move. And my opponent still has a draw with knight h6. My opponent does go knight h6. I go king g7. My opponent can go knight f5. Actually, here, the draw isn't as correct. After the move knight f5, I go to king h8. And after knight h6 again threatening this fork, I simply play queen e7. I'm targeting this pawn, and actually black is very slightly better. Black is very, very slightly better, and it's kind of plain to see. It's kind of plain to see. There's no sacrifices since I have so many defenders against my king. My knight My rook can be classified as a defender in some lines if the f pawn moves forward. The queen can be classified as a defender if both pawns move forward. Like, I have a decent amount of defenders, and there's honestly no real way for him to checkmate me here, so he's going to have to do a little better. Instead, after knight h6, his idea was to play this move knight to g4. Ew, I don't like that, actually. My opponent plays knight g4, and immediately the alarm bells start going off in my head. I realize, you know what? I can make a draw, but black is better. I know black is better simply because I get this move h4 off, getting the knight out of there, and then my knight's going to be able to develop maybe to the h7 square up here, because the knight doesn't really want to be in the center. It would more rather be over here on the king side, since I'm actually doing very, very well on king side. I have a 4-on-3 technically over here, if I can correctly click the buttons, and I know black is better. But of course, I'm playing for a draw. My opponent goes knight f2. Obviously the best move. Knight to h2 would be kind of ridiculous. Just getting knight out of the game. And instead of pushing my advantage, which is actually kind of easy to do, a very easy way to push the advantage is to play this move f5, which is very, very easy. All honesty, I was thinking about this move, but I just was so tired. It was the last round of the tournament. I'd already played a 90-minute game of chess today. Oh, by the way, the time control is 90 minutes with a 30-second increment. F5 is a very, very obvious move. I really should have played it. It permanently stops the move e4. My queen gets active. My knight wants to go to one of these squares in the future, so why am I not doing this? I knew that was a way to push my advantage. Another way is to play knight h7 immediately. That's also very reasonable. The idea is f5. Instead of doing that, I started playing for a draw. And I played queen d6. With the idea simply, okay, I'm getting a queen trade off the board. Maybe I have like a slightly better endgame, but in all honesty, it looks like a draw. I want it to be a draw. Let's make a draw, dude. Come on. Let's make a draw. And I knew that my opponent had nothing better than to trade queens, which he does. Rook d6. And it's equal. But when you're playing for a draw, it's not even the fact that it's hard to put in the words, really. That's why I'm stuttering so much, as you can hear. When you're trying to play for a draw, a lot of the time you just make the position worse for yourself, since you know that you don't want to get into complications, and if you get into complications you could lose. So you're very, very nervous about everything, and you just don't believe in yourself. You don't believe in anything. You just believe in the equality of the position. So after the move knight d3, I play the most accurate move. Obviously rook e8 makes a lot of sense coming in. And I calculated that after knight c5, I thought I was fine. After even rook takes e3 here, and like rook takes c4 is probably very, very reasonable. But even after like rook e7, and I thought black was comfortably better, my opponent decides instead to play a move rook f3, obviously preparing this move knight to c5, and I made the wrong plan here. I made the wrong plan. I thought that my pieces needed to be on the queen side, since that's where my opponent is stronger, right? He has 4 pawns versus my 3 here that are trying to crash down, and that's where he makes his counterplay. But I'm winning. I'm actually a lot better. I'm positionally winning in this position if I simply play some accurate moves. If I simply play like the f5 knight h7 idea, or even f5 and go for knight e7 this way, like I could do that, but instead, I play knight d7. Okay, reasonable. Maybe I could play f5 in the future. It's also stopping these 2 squares. You might say, well, it's not exactly stopping knight c5, but it is, because here I simply play this move rook d5, for example, after b4 defending the pawn, like even rook g2, and I'm gonna pick up something. He's way too overworked here. Like he has to play passive, and then rook e4, and then a3, and then we get into some interesting play. Like Rook e2 wins the pawn, for example. Right, so that was my idea. After that, my opponent, after knight d7, plays a very reasonable move. But at the same time, it's a move that doesn't make a lot of sense. He plays the move king f2. Okay, that's what you're supposed to do in that endgame, right? You're supposed to bring the king. That's like the main point of the endgame. That's what you do. But it's not. Not in this position. In this position, the king being on f2 is actually severely hampering this rook's ability to develop, because this rook wants to double up on the f-file, right? So the king being on f2 is just the wrong time. My king is perfectly placed on g7, not hampering my pieces. Always, it has the ability to get into the game when need be, if I can draw arrows, and I'm doing really well, but I make a series of mistakes, and this cost me the game. I play a different plan. I play a different plan than f5, knight f2, knight f6. I play knight b6. Play knight b6. My idea, I'm coming here. Coming here, my knight looks good. Can you really argue with me there? My knight looks good. It just does. I really want my knight to be there. I was not afraid of the move knight c5. I thought rook e7, and I was doing fine. I was really, really unafraid of this. I thought, okay, the knight is on c5 now. Who cares? Maybe my knight can come up here, hit some pawns. Maybe even could wrap around here. I get the b6 move in some lines. And I thought, okay, I thought I was like either comfortably better or just equal. My opponent goes b3. A move I thought about for a while. Idea, of course, stopping me from going knight c4, and after this move, knight to b5, I believe that his idea was to play the move c4 himself. Knight to d5. But my idea after this move c4 was that I was going to get into this position, come back out, swerve around the knight. Knight's a very tricky piece. It's hard to trap. It's actually one of the easiest pieces to trap, but, you know, yeah, my point still stands. It's a very tricky piece, so unless it's like quite simple that the knight doesn't have many squares, it's a bit tricky. And I go knight d5, right? This is my plan. I'm trying to come around here, trying to make some plays. Maybe I come to b4, target this, go around here. I don't know. I have pressure. I have play. I like my position, and my opponent goes e4, and I'm winning the game. I'm actually doing really, really well if I find one and only move that I completely missed from afar because I was calculating e4 for 20 minutes. My opponent spent a very, very long time on this move e4, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, e4, that's a very interesting move. He's targeting my knight. I don't want my knight to move. Knight to b4, for example, I thought was quite bad after a very simple move like c3, and I didn't think that my knight could really get out of the position, like knight c2, rook c1, maybe I have to go to a3, maybe my opponent is going to, like, I don't know, put pressure here, like play this move, rook to d3, something like that, and I was just, I don't know if I like that. So after the move e4, I obviously didn't want to bring my knight out of the center. I didn't want to put my knight back. I calculated, and I calculated, and I calculated, and I played this move, b6. And as you can see, this move was not the right move. The right move is actually a very, very simple tactic. Simply knight c7. Okay. Now your pawns are weak. I'm going b6. If you go here, I can take on d4. This pawn is hanging. My knight's coming in. There's not much that you can do. If your knight comes back, I don't know. I win another pawn, right? This is simple stuff, really. It's simple stuff. And I'm embarrassed that I didn't see it, but then again, I was looking for piece trades, and I saw that the best way to make piece trades was b6. And at this point, my opponent took on d5. I took on c5, and I calculated for a while here about which was the best line to play. And I hate to say it, but I was wrong. I was wrong. In my quest to get a draw, with my higher rated opponent and gain those like precious like 4 points or whatever that I would get, I made a lot of mistakes. And here is the decisive mistake. My opponent goes c4. The very, very good move. Very, very good move. And I have two choices. Obviously, after here, I thought that black was actually doing very, very well. I thought he was winning. I thought I was winning. After this move, I thought that I could even take with the pawn here, and now this pawn is weak, and I'm going to be able to get in something like this. I thought black was doing quite well. Only move here, by the way, c4 is the only move to keep playing, but still, rook c6, and there's some problems. This is the line I saw, actually. I saw this line c4, I was, I don't know, a little bit concerned, but I didn't really think too much of it. I thought black was slightly better. After this, c4, I have a choice of which pawn to take. Either I take this pawn, my opponent takes this pawn, I take back with the rook. Do I like that, though? Not really. He has his connect 3. He has his connect 3 versus my one pawn. Sure, I have a passer, but you know what? That passer is going to be lost. There's nothing that I can do to get that passer to stay in the game. Nothing I can do. I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose that pawn, and then he's just going to have a 3-on-1. I'm not going to be up a pawn anymore. I didn't like my position. And so I played the other move. This move. I calculated very simply. I thought, okay, cd4, he's going to take this pawn. I'm going to play rook here. He's going to take here. I'm going to take here. He's going to have a 2-on-1 over here. I don't know. It's probably looks like a draw to me. Wait, isn't that what I've always wanted in my entire life? You're right, it is. But I miscalculated, and after I took this pawn. This is a decisive mistake of the game, by the way. My opponent had a very, very nice move. A very, very, very nice move. My opponent took on c5. And I saw this. I saw this line. And the move that I missed, I actually saw this move right after I played cd. I was like, oh no, that looks bad. After dc5, rook c6. My opponent's not going to take on d5. My opponent's not going to take on d5. They're going to play this very, very natural move. They're going to play b4. And although taking on c4 is forced, this pawn is going to be lost. This pawn is absolutely going to be lost. And what happens now is a much worse version of the other positions that I showed you. Instead of a 3-on-1 back here versus the pawn, with this pawn on the d file, now we have a 3-on-1 with these pawns already slightly advanced. And this pawn is very, very, very much unprotectable. This is a nightmare, and black is losing. Black is losing. My opponent goes rook c1. I think for a while, I know that I'm a lot worse. I decide, okay, the one thing that's like keeping my position together is the fact that his king is cut off. So, well, I play rook e4. I defend his pawn, keep the king off. My idea is to play f5. He obviously can't play this. Since I play this, I want to play a6 at some point, stop this. His idea is going to be play this, break in, and just promote pawns, right? So I have to be careful. My opponent just simply plays rook fc3, and the game is lost. The game is lost. I go king f8. What am I supposed to do? I gotta bring my king, right? That's the only way I'm gonna be able to stop these pawns from promoting. The only way. I want to simply take the pawns. I think for a while, okay, if I trade the rook, I lose a bit of counterplay, and really, I don't know. It just looks losing. It looks losing if I trade the rook. I thought maybe if I keep the rook around, I keep some level of play. So I drop back one square. I drop to e5 and say, okay, if here, I'm going to drop back, and if you can't go here now because I would win this pawn. That was my idea with rook e5, and also simply putting my rook on a defended square and not letting the king cross. My opponent goes b5. I think for a while, the two moves, rook c8 or rook c7. I thought that rook c8 was losing since my rook was on the same line as my king, and I thought that there was going to be some very, very interesting ways for him to simply win the game, such as, for example, after rook c8, I thought that even this move was winning. I thought that this move even could be winning, and like after takes, c7. No, I'm very wrong here. Okay, maybe it wasn't that move. Maybe it was just simply a4 and b6. Yeah, something like that. But no, b5 is a very good move. I put my rook on c7. Thought that this was good because now my king and my rook are not on the same line. I don't have to waste the tempo to bring my king up. My opponent goes a4. Reasonable move, bringing the pawn. I knew it was the best move, and I go with this move, king e8. And now I see the forced win. But the forced win here, if you can't see it, is move b6. Very simple move. And the line goes after takes, my opponent will capture. I am forced to go with this move, rook b7, and then my opponent's going to go rook c8, king up to d7, rook 8 c7, rook takes c7, rook c7, king c8, king d8, and eventually is going to just simply have too much play. Like for example, he can win this pawn. This is probably winning for white. It's technically a mistake, but whatever. The best move is a rook c2. I don't even care. Yeah, black is losing. The pawn is gonna promote. I can't come back in time to stop it. If I come here with my rook, then the move a5 and 2 passers, not looking good for black. That's my dog howling in the background. Don't worry about that. But my opponent gives me chances. He misses it. He goes a5 instead. And now I have time. I bring my king to d7. And I'm starting to maybe be able to hold this position. I might be able to stop his pawns. c6. King c8. The best move. b6. Takes. Rook c to e7. Mate is on the board. And it starts with rook a4. Right. I thought I saw this line and I thought, okay, that's game. I'd have to play this. Something like c7, king up, and even, well, just queening, right? But he doesn't see that. He doesn't see rook a4. He gives me more chances. He goes b7 check, and now I'm starting to feel, maybe I'll be able to do something here. I go king c7. My opponent goes rook to b4, which is a mistake, again, trying to push the pawn and make a queen, but now I can simply go rook e8, defending. It's still +3, but I might be able to make a draw here if he plays some inaccurate moves. He goes rook d1, threatening a checkmate. Well, not a checkmate, sorry. He's threatening here, king takes, and queen? No, here king takes, and I can't stop the pawn from queening. Well, I can go here, but then I'm just going to lose all my pawns, and yeah, that's no good. No bueno. Rook d1 is a very classy move, but I simply go with this move rook b8. I stop the pawn from coming closer, so then after this move, I would simply be winning this pawn. My opponent goes rook c4, defending the pawn, threatening a checkmate here if I do anything. That was wrong. He does not have a checkmate, but he is completely winning with like c7. Instead, I steal my nerves. I go rook e7. My opponent goes rook d5, and I thought, okay, you know what? Aren't I just like repeating moves? Rook b8, rook a. He didn't play the move. Sorry, that was one mistake of mine. I messed up on the annotation when I was annotating this game. He played rook a5, actually, coming down this way. And we're going to have to do the rest of the game like this because I don't really have another way to do it. I go rook b8, saying, of course, this was his idea. He wants to go rook a8. If I do it the other way, I thought that like if I didn't play this move, if I play like something random, rook a8, and now I'd have to go rook b8 anyway. And I'm like what? Rook a4? Why am I allowing this? Why am I allowing this? He's queening. Instead of doing that, I play rook to b8. My opponent goes rook a8. I go rook e8. And my idea is that after rook takes b8, which is played in the game, I could take with the rook. I could take with the king. Both lines are losing. If I took with the rook here, my opponent, I thought, would get king e3, and I'm unable to cut off the king anymore. I go here. He can simply play a move like rook d4, and it's game over. It's game over. here? I have nothing. I go back to b8. I don't know. He plays like rook c4. Actually, wait, this is how is white supposed to break through? Rook a4 is the way to break through. And after takes, you simply go rook a8, and black can't stop the queen. And you're always threatening that the king is coming in, so I have to guard that. So that's why I didn't like taking with that work. Instead, I took with a king. But this loses very simply. Rook a4. Rook a4. Yeah, rook a4. King up to c7. Rook a8, threatening to win my rook. I'm forced to go rook b8. Takes. And now my opponent simply brings his king. I play king c7, king d4, g5, and after the move king e4, I resign the game. Simply because my opponent is going to win all my pawns. There's nothing I can do. He's going to win all 4 of these pawns while my king is stuck guarding this. If I ever take this pawn, he makes a queen. So I can't do that. Of course, as you can see, the end says plus 80 for a second there. Yeah. That's it. And that goes to show why really it's the mindset that matters. In this game, I was tired. I was tired from round 4 earlier. I didn't want to play much chess. I just wanted to make a draw and leave. But a draw is never an option, and really I should have known that. Either way, that's all I got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, do all the normal things YouTubers tell you to do. And, yeah. Good evening and good night.